So today, we continue our deep and necessary exploration of secret societies. Last time, if you recall, we discussed how they come into power through the specific mechanisms of transgression and cohesion. Today, we are going to look at where they actually come from historically and what they fundamentally believe about the nature of reality. Now, I need to warn you right at the beginning that some of the material we will cover today is genuinely controversial. There are certain concepts and specific words that trigger immediate censorship on modern technological platforms. So, I will write certain things down rather than speaking them aloud directly. That fact itself should tell you something profound about the world we live in. The fact that certain ideas are literally unspeakable in our supposedly free and open society. But let us proceed regardless, because understanding these hidden traditions is absolutely essential for understanding how power actually operates in the world. These are not just historical curiosities or myths. The beliefs we are going to explore have shaped the ruling class for centuries, and they continue to shape it today. Also, I know some of you in the comments section have been asking how you can support my work, and I am really, truly grateful for that. It truly means a lot to me. So I wanted to let you know that I have now set up YouTube Super Thanks and channel memberships. You will see the Super Thanks button right below this video, and you can also check out the memberships tab on my channel main page. But I want to be really clear about this. You absolutely do not have to do this. I am committed to educating you for free. All my content will always be available to everyone at no cost whatsoever. You do not have to pay me anything or feel any pressure whatsoever. But if you do have the means and you would like to support the channel, I would really appreciate it. Your support helps me continue creating this content and keep improving what I do here. So yes, Super Thanks and memberships are now available if you are interested. Thank you so much for being here and for your support in whatever form it takes. To understand secret societies, I first need to explain the history of religion in the Western world, and I am going to simplify this massive topic for the purpose of clarity. This is a condensed version, a sketch rather than a complete portrait, but it will give you the framework you need. In the Western world, there have been three major stages of religious development. First was the mother goddess civilization. Second was polytheism, meaning the belief in many gods. Third was monotheism, meaning the belief in one singular God. Each stage represented a fundamental transformation in how humans understood themselves and their relationship to the cosmos. And each transition involved conflict. Ideas do not replace other ideas peacefully, they conquer them. The mother goddess civilization arose specifically because of agriculture. When humans began farming, they faced two fundamental problems. The first problem was making sure your crops were healthy and could be harvested in time to prevent starvation. The second problem was having as many children as possible to work the fields. These two problems shaped everything about how early agricultural societies organized themselves, and they gave rise to a particular kind of religious worldview centered entirely on fertility and reproduction. At the center of this religion was the womb. The woman's womb was considered a divine portal, a gateway from the spirit world into the material world. Think of it almost like a cave through which the spiritual realm can manifest itself in physical form. Because the womb was central to this worldview, women held the highest status in society. They were seen as direct representatives of the mother goddess who ruled the universe. Women controlled the religious rituals, and women interpreted the divine will. Now, in this world, everything was understood to be interconnected, harmonized, and balanced together. The womb was the center, but it connected to everything else. It connected to the stars above. This gave rise to astrology, the study of celestial movements, and their influence on earthly affairs. It connected to the crops in the fields, the rhythms of planting and harvest. In an ideal situation, all three would be aligned. By reading the stars, you would know when to plant crops. You would know when was the best time to conceive children. Everything flowed together in a great cosmic dance. Usually in these societies, the mother goddess was represented as a bird. Why a bird? Think about it carefully. Of all the animals in nature, it is the bird that has dominion over the sky. If life comes from above, if the spiritual realm is associated with the heavens, then the divine mother must be a creature of the air. But the mother goddess was also paired with another symbol, the bull. This represents virility and masculine energy. Women cannot conceive children by themselves. They need the masculine principle. So the bird and the bull together represented the complete divine reality, feminine and masculine, heaven and earth, spirit and matter. Now, this world was very strange from our modern perspective. There was no concept of private property. Everything belonged to everyone. There was no rigid hierarchy. Everyone was essentially equal within the community, and there was no concept of exclusive sexual partnership. Sex was actually a community act. They had rituals called fertility cults in which groups would have sex together, multiple men with one woman. This seems shocking to us today, but it made perfect sense in their worldview. Think about it from the woman's perspective. You want to have the best possible children. You want the best genetic material, but you do not know which man has the best genes. So you mate with many men and let nature sort it out. Whichever sperm is strongest will prevail. This was the mother goddess civilization. It persisted for thousands of years. And then something changed. What changed was war. For the first time in human history, as populations increased, there was now serious competition for resources. Conflicts arose between communities, and conflict transformed everything about how society was organized. What was the most important resource in this world? What were men fighting over? Women, females, because it was females who gave birth, and giving birth was the source of all wealth and power in an agricultural world. More children meant more workers, which meant more production, which meant more prosperity. With war came a new concept, property. In order to get men to fight wars, you had to give them something as a reward. And that reward was a woman, a wife who belonged to them and only them. Do you see how radical this shift was? Previously, sex and reproduction were community affairs. Now, suddenly a woman belonged to one man exclusively. This was the birth of marriage as we know it, the birth of the nuclear family, and the birth of patriarchy. In this new world, you had property, you had hierarchy, you had exclusive marriage, and the role of women decreased while the role of men increased. The men who were successful in war became the new elite. They accumulated women and resources. They passed these down to their sons. Someone asked me a good question about this. Why do men go to war and not women? The answer lies in the dynamics of the mother goddess society. In that world, women had intrinsic value. By definition, they could bear children. But men were only valuable if they contributed something. As populations grew, resources became scarce, and it was always the young men who were discarded. There was not enough food or enough women for everyone. So excess young men were pushed out of their communities. These young men became like wolves, wolf packs roaming the wilderness. And what did they do? They raided other communities. They captured women. This was the origin of war. Dispossessed young men banding together to take by force what they could not obtain peacefully. With the coming of war, a new religious system emerged, polytheism, the belief in many gods. Here is how it worked. Each society had its own god. When societies went to war, it was understood that their gods were also at war. If you lost the battle, it meant your god was inferior to their god. So to maintain peace after wars, the losers would acknowledge that their god was weaker. Their god would become subordinate to the victor's god. Over time, this created hierarchies of gods, pantheons. Think about the Greek pantheon. Zeus sits at the top. Below him are Apollo and Ares and Aphrodite and all the others. They are called the children of Zeus. But historically, these were originally separate gods worshipped by separate peoples. Through conquest and incorporation, they were assembled into a single family. The people who believed Zeus was the supreme god won wars against the people who worshipped other gods. And so the other gods became Zeus's children or servants or siblings. The pantheon is really a record of conquest preserved in mythological form. This was polytheism, multiple gods in a hierarchy reflecting the political realities of multiple societies forced into a single imperial order. And then came the next transition from polytheism to monotheism. The shift to monotheism came with a new political formation called empire, specifically the Roman Empire. And they introduced a new religion called Christianity, which became the first truly dominant monotheistic religion in the world. Now, there is a lot of debate about what was the first monotheistic religion. Some people say Zoroastrianism. Some people say Judaism. I will argue later in this course that Christianity was actually the first fully monotheistic religion to achieve widespread dominance. The earlier traditions contained monotheistic elements but had not developed them as fully. The key difference between polytheistic warfare and imperial warfare was this. In the polytheistic world, humans were still the most precious resource. You wanted to conquer other peoples, but you did not want to exterminate them. You wanted their labor, their tribute, their genes. But when you have an empire like Rome, you do not need to worry about preserving populations. You can destroy entire societies if they resist. You can impose your reality, your God, on everyone else through pure force. That is how you get monotheism, not through persuasion, but through the annihilation of alternatives. Now I want to explain something crucial about how the worldview changed through these stages, because the religious transformation was also a transformation in how humans understood the nature of reality itself. In the mother goddess civilization, there was a fundamental belief that we have completely lost. They believed that mind leads to matter. Think about what this means. They believe that consciousness is primary, that the spiritual realm creates the physical realm, that the mind gives rise to the brain rather than the brain giving rise to the mind. In our world, we believe the opposite. We believe matter leads to mind. In science class, you are taught that we have a brain. The brain, through synaptic connections, creates the mind. Consciousness is a byproduct of physical processes. Even though we are taught this, if you actually think about it carefully, it does not make much sense. How does our small brain, with its limited physical resources, do so much processing? How are we able to imagine things that do not exist? How are we able to dream entire worlds? It is genuinely mysterious. And if you talk to the very best neuroscientists in the world about these questions, their response is always the same. Do not ask this question. They do not say, we do not know. They say the question itself is forbidden. It is not a legitimate area of inquiry. Why would a question be forbidden in science unless the answer threatens the entire materialist worldview that modern society is built upon? For most of human history, societies believed that mind creates matter, that consciousness is fundamental, that the spiritual realm is more real than the physical realm. Our modern belief is actually the anomaly, the exception, the strange new idea that contradicts thousands of years of human understanding. The second major difference is that the ancient world was metaphorical while our world is literal. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say you and I get into a fight. How would we describe what happened? In our literal world, we would say something like, I became angry. The emotion overwhelmed me, then I hit him, then he got angry, then he hit me back. It is a chain of internal states leading to external actions. But in the metaphorical world, they would describe it differently. They would say that anger, the God, seized me. Anger propelled me into the fight. Then anger unleashed the God of vengeance who seized the other person and made him fight back. In this understanding, we are not the authors of our actions. We are controlled by forces outside ourselves. Gods and spirits move through us. We are vessels, not agents. Now, you might think the literal understanding is more accurate. It is certainly more compatible with our sense of individual responsibility. But think about it from the perspective of actually understanding human behavior. Have you ever been angry and done something you later regretted? Something that felt like it wasn't really you? Most people have this experience. It is almost as if something else took control. The metaphorical understanding captures this perfectly. Anger is a god. When the god seizes you, you are no longer yourself. You become an instrument of the god's will. From the perspective of understanding the depths of human psychology, the metaphorical worldview is actually much more useful than the literal one. And here is something important. Because of this metaphorical understanding, the ancients were far more creative than we are today. Their minds worked differently. They had access to imaginative capacities that we have lost. I know this is hard to accept. We think of ourselves as advanced and the ancients as primitive, but consider the evidence. We have never really figured out how the Egyptians built the pyramids. Our best explanation is essentially that aliens did it, which is really just an admission that we cannot understand how humans could accomplish such feats. But if mind leads to matter, then humans who fully understood this principle would have powers that seem impossible to us. They would be able to accomplish things that our materialist physics says cannot be done. The pyramids are just one example. Throughout the ancient world, we find structures and artifacts that defy our understanding: the Antikythera mechanism, the Nazca lines, Stonehenge. We keep coming up with increasingly elaborate theories to explain how primitive people could create such sophisticated works. Or maybe they weren't primitive at all. Maybe they understood something fundamental about reality that we have forgotten. When we move to the polytheistic world, this system of understanding continues but becomes more complex. They add additional elements. First, they believe that we are controlled by gods. We are the playthings of the gods. This is central to Greek tragedy. Humans make plans, but the gods decide outcomes. Now, what is important to understand is that these gods are not morally superior beings. Zeus, Apollo, Ares, they are not good. They are just powerful. In fact, they have all the same flaws as mortals. They are jealous. They are petty. They are vindictive. They chase after sexual conquest. What does a human king do all day? He chases after young girls. He schemes for power. He indulges his appetites. What does Zeus do all day? Exactly the same things. The only difference is that the gods live forever and have more power to indulge themselves. Above the gods in the hierarchy are even older forces, fortune, fate. Even Zeus is subject to these. The belief was that although the gods are powerful, they themselves are controlled by forces beyond their understanding. And at the very top are the unwritten and immutable laws of the universe. Concepts like justice. Think of them like gravity. They give structure to the cosmos itself. What mattered in the polytheistic world was not being good. What mattered was being lucky, being fortunate. Because good fortune showed that the gods favored you. But there was a limit. Even if you had the favor of the gods, even if you were tremendously lucky, if you violated the fundamental laws of the universe, you would eventually be punished. Justice would catch up with you. Think of Oedipus. He is a good man. He tries to do the right thing, but he is caught up in a fate that was set before his birth. And when he unknowingly violates the cosmic order by killing his father, marrying his mother, the consequences are devastating. This was a sophisticated worldview, multiple layers of causation, gods above humans, older forces above gods, and fundamental laws underlying everything. It gave people a framework for understanding why things happen, even when those things seemed random or unjust. Then came monotheism, and everything changed. With monotheism, you had a new concept that had never existed in human history before: one true God. And this changes absolutely everything. Before this, humans thought in complex, sophisticated, diverse, imaginative ways about the world. Multiple gods meant multiple perspectives, multiple sources of truth, multiple valid ways of living. But now with Christianity, there is only one true God. And as such, three new concepts become dominant in the world. The first concept is truth with a capital T. If there is one true God, then there must be one truth to the universe. There is a single correct answer to every question. And when we move toward that truth, that is good. When we move away from it, that is evil. Before this, evil as a concept didn't really exist in the same way. You did good things because they were to your advantage. You avoided bad things because they brought bad consequences. But now, if you defy God, that itself is evil. Regardless of the consequences, evil becomes a cosmic category. The second concept is the individual. Before, what mattered was your family, your community, your society. Your identity was embedded in relationships. But now, with the advent of one true God, the community doesn't matter as much. What matters is your personal loyalty, your faith in the one true God. You can step outside your community. You can defy your family. As long as you have faith in the one true God, you are right and they are wrong. This is the birth of individualism as we know it. These three concepts, truth, evil, and the individual, are crucial for you to understand because they underpin modernity. They are the foundation of the world we live in today. Our entire civilization is organized around these ideas. But here is what is fascinating. These concepts are beyond normal human intuition. You cannot logically by yourself deduce or come up with these ideas. They are not natural to human thought. The mother goddess civilization was intuitive. You look at the world and see cycles of birth and death. You see the importance of fertility. The religious system follows naturally from observation. The polytheistic world is also intuitive. You experience yourself as buffeted by forces beyond your control. You personify those forces as gods. It makes sense. But the monotheistic world is counterintuitive. One God who is everywhere and nowhere. One truth when human experience is so various. An abstract individual separate from all relationships. These ideas had to be imposed. They did not arise naturally. And this is why for monotheism to triumph, it had to destroy the polytheistic world. Not just defeated, but annihilated, because polytheism was natural. Given a choice, people would return to it. The only way to establish monotheism was to eliminate all alternatives. The Romans, and then the Christians after them, spent centuries systematically destroying polytheistic culture, burning temples, killing priests, forbidding rituals, erasing memory. But here is the thing. You can never truly kill an idea. An idea that is suppressed doesn't disappear. It goes underground. Remember, in the mother goddess civilization, the main instruments of religious worship were fertility cults run by women. When war came and men took over, women lost their dominant position. But they didn't simply accept this. What happened was that women went underground. They created new religious organizations called mystery schools. These mystery schools were dedicated to maintaining the best knowledge and traditions of the mother goddess civilization. Especially, they preserved the great secret, the secret that we create the universe through our imagination, the secret that mind leads to matter. This was the core teaching that had to be hidden from the new patriarchal order. These mystery schools became extremely popular among the elite. Why? Because they offered great sex. The elite joined these mystery clubs essentially as sex clubs. Remember, in the mother goddess civilization, the womb was sacred and sex was a mechanism for communicating with the universe. The mystery schools preserved these sexual techniques. They taught practices designed to produce ecstatic states of consciousness, states where you could access the deeper reality beyond the material world. The most powerful people participated in these mystery schools: kings, generals, and wealthy merchants. They were drawn by the promise of secret knowledge and sacred sexuality. These mystery schools were called mystery schools not because they were hidden, but because everyone who joined was sworn to secrecy. If you ever divulged what actually happened in the rituals, you would be punished by death, executed by the other members. This created intense bonds among the initiates. They shared secrets that could never be revealed. They participated in rituals that would shock outsiders. This is the cohesion through transgression we discussed in our last session. But with the advent of Christianity, these mystery schools faced a new threat. Christianity demanded exclusive loyalty. You couldn't worship Christ and also participate in pagan mysteries. The empire required religious conformity, and the mystery schools were especially threatening because they were where the local elites gathered. The networks that controlled wealth and power were also the networks of initiates. If those networks remained loyal to the old ways, they could resist imperial Christianity. So the empire moved against the mystery schools. The schools went from being open secrets to being actually secret. They became secret societies. This is where secret societies come from. They are an attempt to maintain the secrets of the universe against the advance of Christianity and empire. They have been around in one form or another for over 2,000 years. You may have heard of some secret societies: the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, the Freemasons. These are famous because they were discovered or partly revealed. But there are many more that we do not know about, societies that have been around much longer and are much more careful about maintaining their secrecy. What are all these secret societies trying to protect? What is the great secret? The secret is that mind leads to matter, that we create reality through our consciousness, that the material world is not primary. The spiritual world is primary, and we have access to it. This is something humanity has always believed and always known. But with the advent of Christianity, this understanding has been suppressed. Christianity tells you that God is external. You must obey God. You must have faith in something outside yourself. The secret societies preserve the older understanding. God is not external. The divine is within you. You have the power to shape reality through your consciousness. But this power has been hidden from you by religious and political authorities who want to keep you enslaved. This is the esoteric teaching, the hidden knowledge, the tradition passed down through the centuries in secret, because speaking it openly would mean death. Now, I am going to explain to you what Christianity officially teaches, and then I am going to explain what these secret societies actually believe about the same stories. You will see how radically different the interpretations are. Let's start with what most Christians believe about their religion. This is called the orthodox or canonical perspective. It comes from the official reading of the Bible that the church endorses. At its core, the Bible is a story of covenants between God and humans. A covenant is a contract, an agreement. Throughout the Bible, there are a series of these covenants, each one building on the last. The first covenant is between God and Adam. You know the story. God creates the universe. He creates the Garden of Eden, which is paradise. He puts Adam and Eve there. They don't have to work. Food is abundant. They will live forever. But God gives them one rule, just one. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That is the only thing you must not do. And of course, what do Adam and Eve do? They eat the fruit. So God banishes them from the garden. Now they have to work to grow food. Now they will die. This is the fall, the original sin. Time passes, humanity multiplies. And God looks down and sees that humans have become wicked. They fight, they kill, they worship false gods. God is disgusted. He decides to destroy everything and start over. But then he sees one good man, Noah. So God tells Noah to build an ark and preserve life through the flood. After the flood, God makes a covenant with Noah. He promises never to destroy the world again. But humans are still wicked. So God decides he needs a chosen people, a nation that will be a light to the world, an example of righteousness. He finds Abraham and he makes a covenant. Abraham and his descendants will be loyal to God. In exchange, they will be the chosen people and God will give them a promised land. This is Israel. Over time, Abraham's descendants end up in Egypt where they become slaves to the Pharaoh. God sees this and decides to intervene. He chooses Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and back to the promised land. When they reach the promised land, God gives Moses the law, the 10 commandments. This is another covenant. The Israelites will follow God's law and God will protect them. But even with the law, the Israelites keep falling into wickedness. They worship false gods. They abandon their covenant. So God keeps sending prophets to correct them. Finally, God finds a leader he truly approves of, David. David becomes king of Israel and God makes yet another covenant. The Davidic covenant states that God will always favor Israel as the chosen nation and the house of David will rule Israel forever. Now, let me ask you a question. Who wrote the Bible? If you had to guess who actually put these words down, who would it be? Probably David or people working for David. Think about it. Of all the covenants in the Bible, the Davidic covenant is the most politically useful. It says that David's family will rule forever, that God himself endorses their power. If you were a king, wouldn't you want people to believe that? Wouldn't you commission scribes to write texts establishing your divine right to rule? I am not saying David wrote everything, but it is worth noticing that the biblical narrative builds up to David as the culmination. All the earlier figures, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, they are all leading up to David. And David is presented as the person God loves most, the ideal ruler. After David comes Solomon. These two are considered the greatest rulers of Israel. The Davidic kingdom is the golden age. But after Solomon, things decline. The Israelites turn wicked again. God scatters them across the world. And then comes the final covenant, Jesus. According to Christian belief, Jesus does three things. First, he reasserts the law of Moses. He reminds people of what God actually wants. Second, he sacrifices himself to free humanity from original sin, the crime of Adam eating the fruit. By dying, Jesus pays the debt and redeems humanity. Third, he creates a new covenant because Jesus has died for everyone. Anyone can now be saved. You don't have to be an Israelite. You don't have to follow all the Mosaic laws. You just have to believe in Jesus. So this is what Judaism and Christianity officially teach. The first 5 covenants are what Jews believe. Christians accept all 6, including Jesus as the Messiah. Jews believe that a Messiah will eventually come to restore the kingdom of David, but they do not believe it was Jesus. Now, if you are a thoughtful person, there are lots of problems with this story, questions that the Orthodox interpretation doesn't really answer. First question, why did God kick humanity out of the Garden of Eden? Was eating a piece of fruit really so terrible? What was actually wrong with that fruit that justified banishing humanity from paradise forever? This is a genuine mystery in the religion. The text doesn't explain why knowledge of good and evil is so dangerous. It just asserts that it is. Second question, Noah. God destroys the world because humanity is wicked. But after the flood, humanity is still wicked. Nothing changed. So what was the point? If God is all-knowing, shouldn't he have foreseen that drowning everyone wouldn't actually solve the problem? The whole episode seems pointless. Third question, Jesus. Who was Jesus really, and why did he have to die? If God wanted to forgive humanity for original sin, why couldn't he just forgive them? Why did his son have to be tortured to death first? The logic of redemption through sacrifice is never really explained. It is just asserted as a mystery that must be accepted on faith. Now, I'm going to explain what secret societies actually believe about these same stories, the hidden interpretation that they have preserved for centuries. Let's start with Noah. The Orthodox story says God destroyed the world because humans were wicked, but that is not the full story. There is something else in the Bible that most people overlook, the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the children of angels and human women. The Bible mentions them briefly, but the implications are enormous. What happened was that certain angels called the Watchers came down to earth. They saw that human women were beautiful and they mated with them. The children of these unions were the Nephilim. If you want to learn more about this, there is a text called the Book of Enoch that goes into much greater detail. It is not part of the official Bible, but it was considered scripture by many early Christians. So what were the Nephilim? They were hybrids, part angel, part human, and they were incredibly powerful. Let me give you a thought experiment to help you understand. Imagine the Avengers, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, superhumans who save the world. Now imagine they get bored after saving the world. So they start having lots of sex, lots of children. And these children are also superhuman. What do? Well, they enslave regular humans because they can, because they are so much more powerful. And then what happens? The superhuman children start fighting among themselves. Each one wants to be supreme. The world becomes a battlefield of demigods. That is essentially what happened with the Nephilim. They enslaved humanity. They warred with each other. They created chaos. This is why God destroyed the world. Not because ordinary humans were wicked, but because the Nephilim had taken over and corrupted everything. But here is the problem. The Nephilim were part divine. And the divine cannot be truly destroyed. You can kill their physical bodies, but their spirits persist. So when the flood came, the Nephilim became demons, disembodied spirits living in the shadows. And according to secret societies, they are still here. They still influence human affairs. The richest and most powerful people in the world are either Nephilim or controlled by them. Now, let's get to the deeper question. Why did Adam eat the fruit? And why did Jesus have to die? To understand this, I need to explain what secret societies believe about the fundamental nature of reality. Remember the great secret, mind leads to matter. Consciousness creates the physical world. In the beginning, there was the monad, the one, the true God. Think of it as the divine sun at the center of all existence. The monad is so powerful that when it breathes, it vibrates divine energy. And over vast periods of time, these vibrations create new life forms. The first beings created are called eons. Think of them as cosmic pairs, usually male and female. They are children of the monad, and they themselves can create new realities through their own emanations. So the aeons emanate, and their emanations emanate layer upon layer of spiritual reality branching out from the original source. This is what the secret societies mean when they say mind leads to matter. The entire physical universe is really vibration. It is the breathing of these cosmic beings crystallized over eons into atoms and matter. Now here is where the story gets dark. One of the eons was named Sophia, or wisdom, and Sophia had an idea. The monad can create by itself without a partner. Maybe I can too. So Sophia tried to emanate by herself without her male counterpart. She wanted to prove she was as powerful as the monad. She succeeded in creating something. But what she created was a monster, a distorted being called the demiurge. The demiurge was a monstrosity because it was created against the natural order. Sophia was horrified by what she had made. So she hid it. She threw it away into a sea of clouds where no one would see it. And the demiurge grew up alone. It didn't know where it came from. It didn't know about the monad or the eons or the true structure of reality. What did it know? It knew that it existed. And it concluded that it must be the supreme God, the only God, because as far as it could see, there was nothing else. So the demiurge started creating. It created the physical universe. It created Earth. It created Adam and Eve. Now, think about the biblical story in this light. What kind of God kicks someone out of paradise for eating a fruit? A cruel God, an insecure God, a petty tyrant. What kind of God drowns the entire world because he is displeased? A monster. What kind of God demands exclusive worship and punishes anyone who turns to other gods? A jealous, insecure being who is afraid of competition. What kind of God chooses one people and tells them everyone else is inferior? A divisive, controlling entity. The secret societies say, this is exactly right. The God of the Old Testament is not the true God. He is the demiurge, a false God, a flawed creation who doesn't know his own origin. And the world he created is not a paradise. It is a prison. We are trapped in the demiurge's creation, cut off from the true divine realm. This is the great secret. The God most people worship is a false God, and we are in a prison of his making. So who was Jesus? According to the secret societies, Jesus was a messenger sent by the monad, a cosmic being who descended into the prison world to tell us the truth. His message was simple. Even though you are trapped in this false reality, there is still a spark of the monad within you, a divine light. If you can activate this light, you can transcend the prison. When you die, your soul can escape and return to the true God. But how do you activate the light? By being a good person, by loving one another, by rejecting money and materialism and competition, by pursuing spiritual happiness rather than material success. This was the message of Jesus. And you can imagine that the powers that be were not happy about it. The Nephilim, who now control the prison world through their influence on human affairs, saw this as a direct threat. If people woke up to the truth, the Nephilim would lose their power. The demiurge himself saw it as a threat. If people realized he was a false god, they would stop worshiping him. So Jesus was killed, the truth teller was eliminated, and over the centuries his message was distorted. The church that bears his name became an instrument of the very forces he opposed. This is why secret societies have been so persistent over the centuries. They believe they are guardians of the truth that most people cannot accept. If you went up to an ordinary person and told them the God they worship is actually a monster who is keeping them in prison, they would think you were insane. They might report you to the authorities. In earlier centuries, they would have had you burned as a heretic. So the secret societies have to be secret. They cannot reveal the truth openly. They can only wait for people to wake up by themselves. And when someone shows signs of awakening, they can be approached and gradually initiated into the mysteries. Over the centuries, these societies have been persecuted. Their members have been executed, massacred, driven underground, but they have survived because they believe their mission is sacred. They believe that only by preserving this knowledge can humanity eventually be saved from the prison, saved from the false god, saved from the Nephilim who exploit and control us. Now, I want to show you how this esoteric knowledge has been transmitted not just through secret rituals, but through literature, through poetry, that on the surface seems orthodox, but contains hidden meanings for those who know how to read it. The greatest example is Paradise Lost by John Milton. Paradise Lost is the national epic of the British Empire. If you are an elite member of the Anglo-American world, you memorize this poem. It becomes part of your soul. It shapes how you think about power and rebellion and the nature of good and evil. John Milton wrote it in the 17th century. He was a rebel, a free thinker, a passionate advocate of free speech, and he was almost certainly a member of secret societies. He wrote Paradise Lost when he was blind. He couldn't see. So he had to speak the poem aloud while secretaries wrote it down. Think about what that means. A blind man reciting thousands of lines of perfect verse. He must have seemed like a prophet, a messenger channeling divine truth. The plot of Paradise Lost is simple on the surface. It tells the story of the fall, Adam and Eve in the garden, the serpent who tempts Eve, the eating of the forbidden fruit, the banishment from paradise. But Milton adds something crucial. He imagines the serpent as Satan, and he tells Satan's backstory. Satan was once God's favorite angel, but he rebelled against God. He led a war in heaven. He lost, and now he and his followers are banished to hell. Paradise Lost begins in hell with the devils discussing what to do next. They've lost the war. They will never defeat God. They are trapped for eternity. Now what? Some suggest building an empire in hell. Some suggest just accepting their fate. But Satan is determined to seek vengeance. He proposes corrupting God's new creation, humanity. If he cannot defeat God directly, he will destroy what God loves. The other devils agree, but there is a problem. Someone has to go to earth. Someone has to escape hell, travel through the void of chaos, and find the Garden of Eden. No one volunteers. The journey is too dangerous. And then Satan steps forward. Listen to Satan's speech. Listen to how Milton presents him. Satan acknowledges the danger. Hell is a prison designed to keep them trapped. And beyond hell is the abyss of space. You could wander for eternity and never find anything. But then he says, I should become this throne if difficulty or danger could deter me. He says, I am your leader. You trusted me to lead you. And leadership means taking the greatest risk. He continues, go then, mighty powers, rest here. Enjoy what comfort you can find. I will go alone through all the coast of dark destruction to seek deliverance for us all. This is heroic. Satan is presenting himself as the self-sacrificing leader, the one who will risk everything for his people. And the imagery is significant. Secret societies interpret this speech as describing the soul's ascent from the material world to the divine realm. Satan is escaping the prison. He is breaking free of the false reality. Some traditions hold that when you die, the first being you meet is Satan, not because Satan is evil, but because Satan knows the way out. He has made the journey. He can guide your soul through the void back to the true light. The second crucial speech comes later when Satan as the serpent tempts Eve. Listen carefully to what he says. He asks Eve why God forbade the fruit. He says, you will not die. God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like gods, knowing good and evil. He argues that a true God would reward risk-taking. A true God would want his creation to grow and become more. The prohibition on knowledge doesn't make sense unless God is afraid of something. Then he says, we can only be good if we know what evil is. How can you choose good if you don't understand the alternative? The prohibition on knowledge keeps you ignorant, and ignorance is not virtue. Finally, he points out that either God is testing you, wanting you to disobey so you can grow, or God is trying to keep you enslaved. Either way, the right choice is to eat the fruit. Now, when I took Milton in college at Yale, I was taught that this speech shows how clever and evil Satan is. He is deceiving Eve. God is good and all-powerful. Satan is twisting the truth to lead Eve astray. That is the orthodox interpretation. That is what you will be told in any university English department. But here is the thing. When you actually read the Bible, Satan is telling the truth. Let's look at what Scripture actually says about what happened after Eve ate the fruit. Genesis says, the woman saw that the tree was good for food and a delight to the eyes and to be desired to make one wise. She ate and gave some to her husband, and he ate, and their eyes were open. That is exactly what Satan promised. You will not die. Your eyes will be opened. And that is exactly what happened. Here is the key passage. After Adam and Eve eat the fruit, God says, "See, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." This is why they were banished, not as punishment for disobedience, but because God was afraid. There were two special trees in the garden, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. If humans ate from both, they would become like gods, knowing good and evil and living forever. God didn't want this, so he expelled Adam and Eve to prevent them from eating from the tree of life. Satan was telling the truth. God was lying. The whole story confirms the esoteric interpretation, but here is a puzzle. How did Eve know to trust the serpent? If she was deceived and she made a mistake that condemned all humanity, that is one thing. But if the serpent was telling the truth, how did she know? After all, the stakes were high. God said, "You will die." The serpent said, "You will not die." If Eve was wrong, she would die. How does she know to take that risk? The answer, according to the secret societies, is the divine spark, the light of the monad within her. She didn't reason her way to the truth. She felt it. Something inside her recognized the truth when she heard it. The false God lies to us, but the true God, the monad, has placed a spark of itself within every human. And that spark recognizes truth. It resonates with what is real. This is why the secret societies say, trust yourself. The truth is within you. You don't need external authority to tell you what is real. You have direct access to the divine. Let me close by returning to the Nephilim because they are crucial for understanding the secret society worldview. Here is what the Bible actually says about them. When people began to multiply on the face of the ground and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves. The sons of God, that is angels, divine beings, they saw human women and desired them. And the text continues, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them. These were the heroes of old, warriors of renown. Heroes of old, warriors of renown. Who does that describe? Hercules, Achilles, Theseus, all the heroes of Greek mythology. The Bible is incorporating polytheistic mythology into its framework. The Greek gods become sons of God, angels, and their heroic offspring become Nephilim. This is part of how monotheism established itself. It didn't just reject the old gods, it reinterpreted them. Zeus becomes a rebellious angel. Hercules becomes a Nephilim. The old stories are absorbed into a new framework where there's only one true God and everything else is derivative or demonic. The secret societies preserve the older understanding. The gods were real. The heroes were real. But they are not what the monotheistic framework says they are. The truth is older and stranger than the official story admits. This is what the secret societies believe. They believe the Nephilim are real and still active in the world today. They believe that the God most people worship is a false God. They believe that the true divine is within us waiting to be awakened. And they believe it is their sacred duty to preserve this knowledge until humanity is ready to hear it. We started today talking about where secret societies come from. They come from the mystery schools of the ancient world. Those schools were driven underground by Christianity. They became secret societies preserving forbidden knowledge. What do they believe? They believe that mind creates matter, that the material world is a prison, that the God of organized religion is a false God, that the true God is the monad from whom we all originate, and that we have the power to awaken to this truth and liberate ourselves. Next time, we will discuss how these originally noble societies became corrupted over time and how the pursuit of hidden knowledge led some of them into genuine darkness. I will see you in the next lecture.